Quilters. I'm Pam Hiller, AccuQuilt's cutting expert, and I'm here with Kaye England.
We're back.
We're back. We're having so much fun with this new Odette Block. So today, Kaye, we're going to talk about moving a little bit beyond the basic block.
Yep.
And you've made some really fun blocks and different projects that you could use with this. So one of the things we tell quilters, this block finishes to 11 inches. And we talk about turning that block on point, because does that not look completely different?
Changes it dramatically.
So when we put it on point, we want to use those side setting triangles. And we don't have an 11-inch setting triangle, but I think we have a fix for that.
I believe we do.
Okay, you want to talk about this?
Anytime I have a block that's going on point and you're trying to decide how you're going to cut your side set triangles, the important thing is, do you want it to float or do you want it to be exact? And when I use the term float, I would be like, if this was out here and that gray filled in all of this,
right,
then I would have my block floating. But if I took my left or my 11-inch block and used your 12-inch side set triangle, I'd still have about an inch of float out there. So once I set it, then my choices would be leave that or true it up to 1/4 of an inch, but you don't have to have an 11-inch side set in order to make this happen.
Right, and this gives you a little bit of wiggle room.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing that. So for those of you who own those 12-inch setting triangles, this is how you want to put it together if you put that block on point. And I thought that was a really good mention, because sometimes I think we kind of get just held up on the numbers. I have the 8-inch
We get way
cube.
held up on the numbers.
Yeah.
And we could, what if you were one of those people, like if, depending on your personality, if you're type A or whatever, you're like, it's got to be, well then sash this fellow up to 12 and use the 12 and you're spot on perfect at that point. And you're smart enough to know if it's an 11 and you need it to be a 12, how much you add.
Yes.
So that's pretty easy.
And you can do 2 sides of an inch, you can do it 1/2 inch around, whatever makes you happy. There is no die police, we tell people
and
that.
what I think, this is a great time to show you that if you wanted a table runner, 2 blocks, I can do 2 blocks, I can do 3 blocks, I could do a 4-block table runner, then I would just need, with a 2-block, I only need 2 side sets and 4 corners. And if you were planning, this would be a great place if you're a quilter. Let's say you love applique. These are great places.
Lots of real estate
to fill in. And I love a side set that has elements built in it also, so squares can be in here, and then I'm building this triangle.
Right, we could use those little squares or half-square triangles from this to build that setting triangle. And I think in your book you show us how to do that.
We do have in the book, and you're as we're talking, I'm sure you guys are seeing quilts flash and round and all of that stuff. But this is where you don't have to make a massive king-size quilt to see the value in a block like this.
Right,
so, love that.
I love this.
And I love yours. That's great color.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now this is the best part. Because...
Well, no, you just did something. What if they just wanted this one little block on point and you wanted to do a table topper?
Or a pillow.
Exactly. All you do is put 4 corners on it. If you do embroidery, put a little of that in it, and you've built a killer little element. And
super
gifts,
cute.
we always want to give gifts, because we sew all this stuff. We want to be able to give a gift. This would be a great little, and I just call them table toppers.
Yeah.
Like, on an end table or something like that. That's
for
great.
A cute little lamp. Okay, I like that.
Good.
All right, so now...
Oh, now what are we going to do now?
Watch this. Okay, so we're going to keep our block out here so everybody can see our block. And then I have a stack of elements sewn in a different fashion.
Oh, and what are we going to call this?
We're going to call it Hack the Stack. We're going to trademark that. Tell us about your friend.
Hurry up and get that copyrighted before somebody else has.
Who's your friend?
My friend Carol, who has a quilt. Carol calls it hacking the block. In other words, taking your bob, which has all these components on it, and building other things unlike, it's kind of like soup. It's kind of like making like
just adding
vegetable
stuff.
soup out of the leftover turkey
Right.
or whatever. It's using the components that you've got. And you actually came up, I have to give you credit for hack the stack.
Yes.
Because what
this is
Carol
stack.
calls it is hacking the block, meaning working those elements.
Yes.
But then Miss Pam called it hacking the stack.
Because she has a stack of elements. I'm going to do that. And, you know, we talk about this a lot because you purchase the die and you've made some Odette blocks and then you're like, well, now what can I do?
Well, you feel like you want to be justified in the dollars you spend for it. You want it to pay its way.
Right.
Is my take on anything. There are times I buy something and just use it once and I'm happy.
Right.
But for the most part, I think when you're spending more dollars, you think, what else will I be able to do? This makes it an easy decision to own this bob because of all the things you can do with it.
All right, so watch this stack of hacks. All right, so these are triangle and a square.
Yeah, this is the bias triangle and the half rectangle.
And look at this cute
Times
little
4.
thing. Times 4. So you could use this for a corner, you could use it
could
for...
be a coaster. It could be
a
the corners
mug
of a
rug.
border. It could be a mug rug. Absolutely. Perfect.
All right, so you're going to move those.
Okay.
Okay, and this is one of the tips that I'm loving so much about Kaye, is that she just draws everything
graph
up.
paper.
She does. Graph paper is her friend. So talk
Look
about
at this. I think that, and all of this is the same element. See, this is just one of the elements that I can build from my components. And wouldn't this be a killer border? I think this would really be a fabulous border. But I also think this little guy, as a single,
I know.
would be a fabulous.
And this would be super fun for like a sashing between the blocks.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we've done this. We used to do this the hard way where you had a big square and you put a connector on it and so through folded back. We have the advantage now of having a pre-cut element that's perfect to do this. I actually want to try to play around and do this with a quilt.
Right.
I'm too busy hacking to do that.
She is too busy. And Kaye reminded us that you don't have to cut all the shapes on the die. And she just cut a few of those shapes and just
with
used
a smaller amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But keep everything, like, just write things down. And I think that that's kind of the cool thing, and then we sew them together for little samples.
Absolutely.
Okay, talk about this block.
I mean, this is really, truly sewers. This is a matter of just going, well, what else could I do? Well, what if I just sewed some of those? I think you ought to just sew a batch of these and then start laying them down and coming up with your own designs. And I'm betting for any of you who have the AccuQuilt books with all of the dies, I could go back to most of those 4 patches that are in those books and build those, but we didn't go through those knowing full well you all would know how to do that. But that's really what this is, just 4 patch, half rectangles.
Yep, and those little squares. All right, so Kaye, it is hard to believe that this is a block
that lives in here.
That lives in here.
And I'm telling you, this is why I love graph paper, Pam, because I can just sit down with graph paper, colored pencils, and a glass of water.
Yes.
and iced tea and design. But this was in a repeat as you build this. I mean, see, and if I turn this on point.
See, it's a whole different
Look at the difference block. If I wanted all that almost does look like a bird or something at that point. I love this on point.
I think it's fabulous.
Next.
All right, so now we have another one, and again, we have graph paper attached to it. But this one is super cute because it looks like a little pinwheel.
Exactly. And what you have, your actual components in an 11-inch, this is really going to finish as a 2 3/4. This is going to be half of that, but I urge you, don't get lost in that. Just go, whatever it is, when it comes off the sewing machine, is what it is.
Yeah.
I make it anything I want it to be with a sashing, but it lets you design, and that's the goal in my mind. Okay?
I like that one. Okay, now this is fabulous because...
This was so many ways of, how many ways can I do this?
Crazy.
Same components.
Yep, here we'll move it down.
Rotated, point out, point in.
Yes.
Now I could build, I would suppose, and I didn't play with this, but if we wanted to go on point, we could still do a little I'd want 2 of this one maybe, or 2 of this one, and then I could do a 3-block table runner that would look like I had a PhD in patchwork.
Yes.
So because
and you would think, oh, we have 3 different patterns. And the reality is, no, you just sat with graph paper.
Same little guy. Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
Love it. Okay.
And don't you love my drawings? Aren't they fabulous?
They're my favorite.
I'll do that. Let me
Okay,
pin.
you do that. You pin and I'll talk. All right, so next, this is my best graph paper one.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put it all together. Okay, first of all, I love your colors here.
This is fun.
So again, the same, look, the corner is the same, except for now it doesn't have that square.
Just 2 of the big triangles.
Yep, yep.
And the corners of this, instead of doing these 2 dies, this is the same thing as this corner right here. So it's just one of these put on the center square.
Right.
And it completely changes, but mathematically it adds up to that biased triangle.
Yes.
Which, look at that look that I get, and then look what happens when I go this way.
And
looks like a flower.
It does. It's so pretty.
See, I could do this as an alternate block. I could do 2 of these, 1 of these, and everyone would think
table topper. You were brilliant.
PhD, folks. It's
there you
PhD.
Go. All right. All right, now we just have this huge stack, and I'm so excited about it. This one is brilliant.
This is a game changer, I think.
This one was brilliant.
Because what's so different about this is this element is just turned around. Because where I have 2 of the biased triangles, here they're out, here they're in, and now it looks like I have these 8 star points.
Right.
So it completely changed. But what I think is so much more fun is I could slap that guy in that corner.
You totally could. You
I
totally
mean,
could.
or I could put a 4 patch.
And this is so cool because it makes it look floating. And I love the fact that you use 2 different blues.
Well, that's what I had.
See, I love a scrappy block. And 2 different pinks.
Yes.
2 different pinks.
And again, noticing that with all of these angles, whether you like pressing open or not, this is a point that I urge you to do it for cleaner points.
Right.
I just think you'll be happier.
Right, there we go. Okay, more graph paper. This one is super cute.
And I got into a couple, I use the basics, because when I'm trying to do something, I love florals and all, but I think it's hard to see all your points and your elements if everything is floral and mucky and busy. I
your
like
eye
that.
doesn't rest.
But it's not easy to show it from a demo standpoint.
Yes.
But I did pull this floral in, but look at this by changing and making a little, now see, this is where these are both lefts.
Right.
So
correct.
I needed a white and a yellow of that. So by putting those in, it's the same size, but I've done it with different components.
Right.
It alters this block completely. Yes. Look at this.
On point, it's just fabulous.
I mean, see, I wanted to make quilt out of all of them, but I ran out of time.
Okay, and you have to name this one. We don't have a name for it.
Yeah,
we should have a contest. Okay.
Oh, maybe we could. Maybe that'll be like you get an M&M bag or something if you do the contest.
Hack the stack, and we'll give you a die. We should do that. Okay. Now this is brilliant. So talk about this whole thing.
Again, let's look at this. I was just simply playing around with 4 patch and like, okay, wait a minute, I love things on point. Well, gee, I'd get that or I'd get that, but if I put 4 of them together, and this is where I love, what repeat do I get with, if it's got squares in the corner or half square triangles, it changes the repeat that you get. So by putting 4 of these in here, look now at my secondary design.
Yes, this is like Storm at Sea. It creates that wave and that illusion of motion, and you only ever sew straight seams.
And again, for those of you who are confident sewers, you know that where I have put 2 together here, you might even say, wait a minute, and this is an old term we use a lot, we design with the block, but I do not sew the block that way all the time. Sometimes I would decide to sew the block. If I were making 20 of these, I'd probably make that a rectangle.
You bet.
Because it'd just be easier.
Right.
But when you're playing and designing, what is so much fun is to just play sometimes. Don't feel like everything you do has to have a, why did I do this? Because I learn more with repeat pattern look by doing that. I think that's a smarter way to approach it.
Absolutely.
I actually want to make, this is my new fabric line.
I like it.
Just thought I'd drop that in.
Yeah. And who makes that fabric line and where can they get it?
Wilmington Prints at your local quilt shop.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, this one is the Enigma
I
block.
might have been drinking something, water or something. No, I thought this was so much fun because the lotus blossom, that lotus flower or the bird of paradise, it looks like it, but it also, if it's running this way, it's a little fish, so I got in my stash and found a little fish on the outside. But it also could be a flower, and depending on how you wanted to build it. So I just used little side sets. So whatever this block is, let's say you own the 6-inch side set or the 8-inch side set triangle, you would be able to do your own point work that way.
Right.
Yep.
I think this is so cute.
I just think that would be...
Is it a boat?
Could be, absolutely.
Okay.
With sails.
With sails.
Yes.
There we go.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, now in your book you talk about medallion quilts.
I love medallions.
And this one is the amazing block.
And this is really kind of like, there's 2 or 3 blocks out there in the end. There's a block called the Titanic block, which is actually the floor. The original floor, the ballroom in the Titanic was a patchwork block. And I went to see...
Fun fact.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I went to see that movie with my husband under stress because I already knew the boat sank. What was the point of going? I already knew that. But I went, and I swear I remember this well because when that came up, I went, quilt block. I was like bird dog. And this is what this would be, is it would just be 4 of those, and then it had a center square and a square like.
Oh, okay.
That's how this kind of design came about when I was playing with this, is I thought, wait a minute. If I use this little fellow here, which is part of our component build, I just have to play with color and I can get a complete medallion out of it. Now, I would, if I were going to build this as a medallion, then I could come around this, and this size is arbitrary and all of that stuff. But I'd like to play around with doing another batch, and when I set that one here, I'd get a completely different repeat on this side than I have here.
Right.
So I would have X's and O's, in other words, where you get that formation like that. I think this could really be phenomenal. Yeah, and this is just graphing it out. And if you haven't worked with graph paper, I'm telling you, and especially if
I'm gonna go buy some today.
If you're new to patchwork and this seems overwhelming to you about how this comes about, pretend and sit down with a square and don't get caught up in what says square is. It doesn't matter. Just dissect those squares until you see something you like.
Yeah.
That's how design happens.
I think that that's so crucial because I think we get caught up in the numbers. Is it, is it a 10-inch
and
block
what is
and
it
11?
called?
And what is it called? And how to, and it's like, no.
And who owns it?
Yeah, no one owns it. It's all, there's all sorts of blocks out there. So.
It's why I don't try to ever say exclusively mine, because really patchwork has been around for centuries, so we didn't invent it.
No.
So.
We did not. We did not.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, and this one has like spiky stars in this. So kind of like talk about this.
Well, this was just using components, make my 4-patch, my little half rectangle, which I could probably pitch these on the table and design 25 blocks out of it. I framed it only just to show you that it could be a medallion. It also could be on point. And I could build around it that way. This, to me, is how you end up with, wait a minute, what if I change those colors? It's a different block. I am telling you, and this is muddy. We call this muddy, very Englishy. This is my favorite look in patchwork, is where it's confusing.
She is not a modern quilter.
I love it and I appreciate it. But I do not want to make it. But when I'm trying to design blocks and show elements, you have to do it in tonals
Right.
so that it doesn't get muddy.
Right.
Because you lose a lot of things in this.
Right.
And that's kind of, I lose
But
a lot of things anyhow.
But again, it kind of looks like a bullseye.
It does,
You could
it
totally,
does.
and then you just added this tiny little border around it.
Not knowing what I'm going to do with it,
No.
it was just a what if, and look at what you can do.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And along the same line,
This is called Odette's Dance.
I just thought that was fun.
So
because,
pretty.
And it's pretty much the same thing. Now you could, because we don't have a large square on this bob, but you're smart enough to know that if you sewed 4 of these together here, well, how big is that? Lay a ruler on it. And if you wanted a single square in lieu of 4 little, even though it's not on the die, you're able to get that by just simply measuring what you've got.
Right.
And,
Right.
and again, I put this one square because the square would be the sum of these. I put one whole square because I was smart enough to measure that.
I was going to say, and here's the big secret. She cut it with a rotary cutter and a ruler.
Works every time.
90% of the time you can use your AccuQuilt, but this is one of those times where it's okay. Just cut
I
the
could
center
have
square.
easily put 4 squares in
You
there,
could
or
have.
I could have put corners on one
could
square.
have.
But I thought, I already know what it is, and I had a piece of that.
And it's pretty. It's pretty.
Now, this one was so much fun.
Okay, this is the best, and we kind of
It's pretty
saved-
much exactly the elements in the one we just showed you. But I, again, just started playing with colors and how many ways can I change the shape. And I just got in my scraps, frankly, and just this was this is why the Odette's Dance, because this was all an old square dance
It's
fabric
super
and stuff.
cute.
And,
Rick-rack fabric.
and again, it's like, well, how did you do that? Well, you guys have got this picture. Stop. Go get your graph paper, and you
Get
can
your graph
see.
paper.
Call this an A unit, a B unit, a C unit, and you've made it.
We should give graph paper when they buy the die. You should get a stack of graph
If
paper
you folks don't
and the
own-
Odette book. And listen, if you're going to get the Odette die, make sure you get a bundle so that you can throw
Yeah.
your Odette book in there.
Because it does have some great tips on the setting, and it does show you, it does have a picture of the bob in there because we had that early on, so we were got a little privy to sliding that in the book as
Yep.
well.
Okay, and there's one thing I just want to show on this one because this is absolutely brilliant. Quilters don't think like this. Okay, so here's the block, and you're going to notice that this sashing is not the same width as this sashing. And it's okay. Everybody take a breath. Because what Kaye wanted to do was have these cute little dancers, and then it just made a block. And do we care what size it finishes
No,
to?
because I'll tell you what's funny. I actually had a 4-patch on this side, and then this would have been wider. And I got back and I looked at it and I went, I don't like that. I just cut it off. See, you have, now obviously if you're planning a wedding quilt or
Yes,
something, you have to be a
yes.
little bit more precise, but that's the joy of patchwork. And for me, if you get my cutting right, then I get the joy of playing.
Right.
And that's what I think makes this so important. And I love it when somebody says, well, I didn't know you could do that. And our answer is, we didn't know you couldn't do that. So
there's
why
no
on
die,
earth
please.
not just be your own designer and create what
Right.
makes you happy?
Right, I agree. So think about the things you can create. You can create pillows and table runners and wall hangings and full-size quilts, just whatever you want, because truly the possibilities, as Kaye has showed us today, as we've hacked our stack, I like that. Possibilities are endless.
Yep.
All right. And on behalf of all of us here at AccuQuilt, and Kaye, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
And remember, at AccuQuilt, we help you cut time so you can quilt more.